But sometimes these headwinds come at you in the environment that you're in, right? You have no control over them. You have no control over the fact that technology is probably completely upending and turning around everything that's going on in your industry, right? Who would have ever thought of Trivago or Airbnb or any of this stuff, 10 years ago? I know I wouldn't have. And so change can also come in the form of the environment around you. And how do you actually adapt to that? So, quick question. How many of you, raise your hands, have ever seen the United States Navy Blue Angels fly? Yes? Oh, yes, yes. Well, congratulations, you saw the second best aerial demonstration team in the world. Because the real question is, how many of you have ever seen the United States Air Force Thunderbirds fly? There we go, there we go. So one of the things that I also nurtured, a dream that I also nurtured along the way, was to become an Air Force Thunderbird. Now, you gotta understand. See, I started flying fighters, graduated in 1997. I've been in 3 operational F-15E squadrons. By now, I'm F-15E mission commander, instructor pilot, the highest level of being able to train people that you can get, been in combat. And they hadn't had a woman Thunderbird pilot yet. Not because I think there was anything necessarily nefarious about it, it's that you had to have a certain number of hours as a fighter pilot to even be qualified to apply. And as I said, I was one of the first women to do that. So it was purely a timing thing. It had nothing to do with them trying to keep women from applying. But I have to say, when I was in my F-15E squadron in England and I started throwing this idea out there, here it was again. Cultural change. Cultural change is hard, right? Hey, you guys. My call sign's Fifi, by the way. That's a story for another time, but you're welcome to call me Fifi. Fifi, what do you mean you want to be a Thunderbird, Well, I was just thinking, yeah, you're right. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't apply, right? Fifi, they haven't had a woman yet. Yeah, you're right, yeah. So I woke up one night, it was 2:30 in the morning, and I kept thinking over and over that I need to apply to do this. It was in my stomach, it was in my soul. It was something I had to try to do. I couldn't sleep. I woke my husband up, and I said, okay, I'm really thinking of putting my hat in the ring. I'm qualified. I met here's what the qualifications are in the email. There's my application, letters of recommendation, my hours. I can do this. I said, but people said they haven't had a woman Thunderbird pilot yet. Do you think I would be a good one? And my husband's 2:30 in the morning, he's like, he's back there, by the way. Of course you'd be a great Thunderbird pilot. Just go to bed. And I remember him taking a pillow and putting it down on my head and going back to sleep. So the next day, I set myself out. I'm determined to do this. I'm determined to put in my application. I know they haven't had a woman Thunderbird pilot yet, but why not me? Why not me? I am perfectly qualified to do this. And I have a right, like everybody else, to put my hat in the ring. And so I had to get letters of recommendation. I went to the first colonel, those colonels, I was just a captain at the time. I went to that colonel and I said, Colonel, I want to put my hat in the ring to be a Thunderbird pilot. Well, they haven't had a woman Thunderbird pilot. We went back and forth and he says, look, there's other people applying. He says, I got to be honest with you. And I'll never forget this. I only get to give one letter of recommendation and I really can't waste it. Because they're not going to pick a woman. It's not time yet. We just started letting you into our Fighter Squadron Boys Club. I mean, can't you just be happy where you're at? And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, now this guy was a product of his generation, right? Cultural change is hard for everyone. It was hard to be on the receiving end of that, but equally it was hard for some of these gentlemen who were much older at the time to accept that their Air Force even had women fighter pilots. Who was I to put my name in the hat for something so elite and prestigious? So head held low. I went over to, like most fighter pilots do on a Friday night, we went over to the bar, right? That's what we used to do. We'd have a few beers together, and the wing commander was there, and he was a brigadier general. So this guy is higher up there, and he starts talking to me. I had given like a ride, an orientation flight to somebody, and I think he was being polite and, talking to me. And all of a sudden, my squadron commander comes over, and he's like, hey, General, did you know that Fifi here wants to be a Thunderbird? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not, no, never mind. And he's like, well, the general's like, that's wonderful, Nicole, let's talk about that. Who's writing your letter of recommendation? And I'm like, well, sir, I was thinking maybe you would. He He says, well, his name is General Mark Matthews, by the way, and he's a mentor to my day. In fact, he's who pinned on my colonel's rank when I pinned on colonel, along with the First Lady of the United States and my husband. That was a primo promotion ceremony. But General Mark Matthews said to me, well, how come you haven't asked me? And I just started being honest, and I'm like, it occurs to me it's difficult. Chances are I won't get picked. They haven't had a woman before. There's all sorts of biases and blah, blah, blah. I just start vomiting out all of this, not feeling confident stuff right in front of him. And he's like, you're a fighter pilot, aren't you? And I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, look, Fifi, if there's one thing I've learned in my life, and I will never forget him saying this, he looked me right in the eye and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he's tall and he's looking down at me. I'm a little captain looking up at him. And he says, Fifi, nobody wants to lead a scripted life. And at that moment, with those words, I was free. I was free to lead my unscripted life. I was free to break free of the paradigm and the restrictions I'd placed on myself. And as importantly, free to break free of the restrictions and paradigm that the culture around me had put on me. I was ready to lead an unscripted life.